the experience that something is really obvious to you, but the person next to you doesn't seem to get it at all, certainly can really happen with kiddos who are just in the process of learning, but it happens with adults too, right? So for example, an engineer might see the world in one particular way, a poet might see the world in a very, very different way. I want to share with you a paradigm that you may not be familiar with at all because most people in America are not. And when I say most, I mean more than 99%. And it has to do with how to use food as medicine from an Oriental medicine perspective. Specifically, there's one ailment that we talk about in Chinese medicine that pretty much all Americans have. And this is called spleen Qi deficiency. So we all have these weak spleens. Okay, what does that mean and why? So the spleen, of course, is one of the digestive organs. It is located, if you take your left hand, so it's opposite on the video right now, but if you take your left hand and put it on your left rib cage, your spleen is right under that and your pancreas is right next to that. So from an Oriental medicine perspective, the pancreas and the spleen are both on the spleen meridian. And the reason for that is because when Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine was being developed, they didn't cut people open to look at their insides. It was all observed from the outside functioning of the human. So when you look at anatomically correct position from an Oriental medicine perspective, I thought my little guy there, my little acupuncture doll guy might have it. Acupuncture meridian anatomically correct position is hands are forward, they're vertical. With Western medicine, hands are out by the side. So, and the reason for that is because Western medicine dissected cadavers, and so that was the position of the cadaver. Oriental medicine looked at the functioning of the body. Okay, and that was done with live people. So spleen Qi deficiency, some of the symptoms that correspond with spleen Qi deficiency, i.e. how do you know you have it, are fatigue and weakness, weak digestion, gas and bloating, our favorite, most popular one, loose stools or diarrhea, prolonged bleeding or easy bruising, brain fog, and difficulty concentrating, even edema, pale complexion, and cold hands and feet. So people who have this are just going to look like they're not absorbing the nutrients from their food very well because that is in fact exactly what's happening. Okay, so one of the things that we can do to help strengthen the spleen is to eat for the spleen, to eat in a way that makes the spleen really happy. So how do we do that? This is going to be really different. In Western medicine, we talk about protein, fat, and carbs, and our conversation pretty much ends there. But from a Chinese medicine perspective, we need to zero in on how do we strengthen the spleen. And here are some things that don't work, and then I'll give you a couple of things that do work. So things that weaken the spleen, I'm gonna hit some of your favorites here, and I apologize in advance, but if you know it, then you can do something about it, and you can know what's in the toy box. So specifically, let's say that you think in your sugar toy box, let's say that you think only Three Musketeers bars are in the sugar toy box, but then you learn that breads, potatoes, pastas turn into sugar very easily in the body, and now you realize, oh, I haven't been having sugar once a day, I've been having it like 20 times a day. That's very different from what I thought I was doing. So the more you know, the better educated decisions that you can make. All right, so let's get down to it. The first one I'm gonna mention is dairy. So all milks or cheeses, cottage cheese, yogurt, kefir, all of these are considered damp and they contribute excess moisture to the body. So you may notice this if you don't feel right when you have dairy, like especially if you have aches and pains, then your body is probably spleen Qi deficient and you're not regulating dairy very well in your system. The second one is fried foods, and it doesn't matter if it's Western medicine or Oriental medicine, you probably know that that's going to gunk up your system, but think about the consistency. Start thinking about the consistency. Like we're talking about like these thick, damp kind of things, right? Like rich foods, also sweet and sugary foods. So this is why We can just make a blanket statement and say, if you've got inflammation in your body, look to gluten and dairy as the two biggest culprits. And if you want to make a change, then cut the gluten, dairy, and sugar. And that is so easily said. It's one sentence and like 5 words, and it's so difficult to do. And I get it. And we're happy to help. We can talk you through that. But the answer is easy. Solving the problem can be the tricky part. Processed and refined foods. So if you are reading a lot of nutrition labels, then you're probably eating a lot of boxed foods, and those aren't likely the healthiest for you. And then finally, and now here's where the meat slices out of the sandwich, literally. Now we're going to flip all this on its head and wreck your perception of health food from an Oriental medicine perspective. And that is, I'm about to say the food that most people think is the absolute healthiest. And it is cold and raw foods. So salads, raw veg. And the reason for that is because the environment of the gut is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a soupy, gooey mess. And so the further away a food is from being 100 degrees Fahrenheit and a soupy, gooey mess, the harder it is to digest. If you're spleen Qi deficient and your digestive system is a bit impaired, it's going to be a lot easier for you to consume soups than it is to consume raw veg. So, just make that into a nice, delicious veg soup or bone broth soup, because if you are constantly eating like salad with cheese on it, then you are going to be creating dampness in your body. I did it by having a whole bunch of ice cream for years, because that was my favorite. And so I really burdened my spleen, and now I get to take really great care of my spleen so that I don't keep doing that. But there's great news. So there's a whole bunch of foods that actually help to transform damp. But one of my favorites is a spice, and it's easy to get, and it's in everything, and most everybody likes it, and it's basil. So you can have fresh basil, or you can have dried basil, but it helps to transform dampness, and it helps your body to eliminate water. So if you do have to have a salad, try having some fresh basil in your salad to help strengthen the spleen there and transform damp. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed this tiny little drop in the pond information about Oriental medicine nutrition and food as medicine and spleen Qi deficiency. So eat basil.